you're saying no to
Yep.
probably a lot of opportunities
Yeah.
coming your way. That's really challenging for a lot of entrepreneurs and founders as they're building companies because they often want to just take any client that's
Oh, yeah.
willing to come to them.
Oh, yeah.
So how have you gone about saying no to, I'm sure would have been some really lucrative opportunities for you? Welcome to this live version of the Liberty Ventures podcast here at Freedom Fest 2024. I am so excited to be talking with Ryan Green, the founder and CEO of IronLite Labs. And Ryan, I want to give you a chance to explain your background and what inspired you to start IronLite, because it's not a traditional company by any sense. You're so purpose-driven. You actively say no to so many opportunities in service of your mission that I want to dive into. And I want everyone to get a sense of how this got started for you.
It actually got started, it was an outgrowth of work I was doing in Chicago. So, I was fortunate. This is my second company. I was fortunate to be in Chicago during the Obama era. So I really got to understand and see how they were using marketing, messaging, digital to really advance, their social change in terms of their worldview, and got really inspired by that. And noticed that a lot of people in the pro-liberty, like libertarian space, weren't really doing that at all, right? And if they were doing it, they weren't doing it effectively. And so I started my first company at that time, did that for 4.5 years, and then ended up getting recruited away from my company to basically build out a marketing agency inside a think tank, the Illinois Policy Institute in Chicago. So started that in 2012, built the team out between 2012 and 2018, had a ton of success, and then started to read the tea leaves in terms of how things were trending, the increase in polarization, how like a intertwining of brands and politics, and they didn't really know how to navigate it. And so my co-founder and I sort of predicted that it would become a point where the larger agencies, the Leos, the Edelmans, the Sachis, it would no longer be profitable for them or in their best interest to continue working on issue sets that had some sort of political angle to it, right? So we had worked on rideshare issues. We had worked on a number of cannabis legalization, all these things in Chicago, and just saw the continued increased polarization. And we were like, what if we start an agency that has like a advocacy, government affairs background, but then is also effective at storytelling, marketing, and we sort of split the middle, and anticipate these guys sort of exiting the space. So in 2018, we launched IronLite with that in mind. And I think our thesis has proven to be true. Like, we've gotten a lot more larger clients that used to work with those firms. Those firms have subcontracted us for some efforts. So that was really the sort of motivator to start IronLite in 2018.
So what I love about this is that you had a background, a little bit in for-profit, a little bit in nonprofit, and then identified an opportunity where you saw the big players in the industry not fulfilling opportunities for those who care about liberty or certain issues that they didn't want to touch. And you wanted to step in order to serve those issues, those opportunities that others weren't going to.
Yeah, and government affairs firms, public affairs firms, they're not built to do communications and marketing effectively, right? They can get you meetings with lawmakers, they can put a legislative strategy in place, but they're really deficient in terms of marketing and messaging. And the way the landscape has changed in the social change and public policy space, you can no longer just rely on handshakes with politicians and meetings at the State House, right? Public opinion, shaping public opinion, large scale social change is how things get done. And so that's really our differentiator, is we focus specifically on that, and built a team that is really optimized to do just that.
And so you're also not then just a traditional marketing or PR company. You're really focused on bringing about change for issues that you care about.
100%. Yeah. So our vision at IronLite is a world without limitations on human potential. So that's the lens through which we evaluate all the projects we take on. So if a larger company were to come to us and say, hey, we want to hire you guys to advance some regulatory, regime or whatever, and we saw it as prohibiting or limiting competition, we would not take them on as a client. And so that's really sort of our guiding, our North Star in terms of how we do what we do.
And as a result, you're saying no to
Yep.
probably a lot of opportunities
Yeah.
coming your way. That's really challenging for a lot of entrepreneurs and founders as they're building companies because they often want to just take any client that's
Oh yeah.
willing to come to them.
Oh, yeah.
So how have you gone about saying no to, I'm sure would have been some really lucrative opportunities for you?
At first, it was extremely difficult because of all the things you've laid out. I remember, I think we were at like 1.5 million or 2 million in revenue, and we were approached by someone that was running for governor, and they were going to give us about 1.5 million. So would have been a 50% increase in top line revenue. And my co-founder and I had made an early commitment that we would not work with politicians, political parties, anything like that. And so when that came up, we did discuss it, but we quickly, turned that business down.
What gave you the strength to turn that down when that would have doubled your revenue?
Man, I honestly, like, we're principled we're mission driven guys. And we've been fortunate to always do work that legitimately and changes and improves people's lives. And we thought that working with a politician or a political party could jeopardize that in some way. And so what the risk reward didn't line up for us, honestly.
So on the one side is that you were principled, you knew what you wanted to do and bringing about change in the world. You've also grown a whole lot since then. So it seems, so I imagine, and I'm hoping to tease out for you that there was a business strategy behind doing this as well, that other entrepreneurs, when they're looking at opportunities that they think to themselves, this isn't in line with what we really want to be doing, but it's going to bring in some money in the short term, maybe we should take it. That your experience turning down those kinds of opportunities and building a successful business might be able to inform them on how they can do the same. So like, what's been the business rationale behind that?
The business, right? So we made two decisions, right? Like, we made the decision to only focus on, the clients that, like I said, advance our worldview of removing limitations or barriers to human potential. And the second thing was zeroing in on state-based politics instead of federal. Again, there's a lot more money at the federal level, right? We could have grown a lot faster, probably been a lot more profitable in those early years, but we understood that our core competency, our key differentiator was affecting change at the state and local level. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of competition at that, at that level. It's changing. The landscape's changing. I think a lot of people are waking up and realizing like you can actually get things done at the state level now. And so you're seeing a little bit of a shift in the marketplace, but we were so early on that, we were able to really get in and grow very quickly. We made the Inc. 5000 last year. They informed us we've made it this year. That won't be public till August.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so, so it's been really rewarding and gratifying to, have made those decisions early on in the company and then, still be able to grow the business pretty quickly.
And I would imagine having such a specific focus, not only with your mission, but which clients you bring on, is establishing the brand very clearly so that when there are companies or organizations out there that want to bring about this change, they know you're the group to go to as a result.
Yeah. I mean, we're all, the other thing that we, sort of filter clients through is what are they actually trying to achieve? Because we're very much focused on outcomes. So we've changed more than 70 laws since 2018. And that's because, we're very disciplined and very focused on, why people are hiring us. Again, turning down business. We have had clients approach us that are aligned. They check a lot of boxes, but, we're not interested in doing just like a branding project or, these one-off things that aren't really advancing social change.
Beyond turning down opportunities like that, do you ever feel like there's a tension between your purpose, the change you're trying to make, and trying to make money here? Because too often there are entrepreneurs who feel like they have to choose between one or the other.
I don't know. I think you can talk yourself into believing that. But I think we've proven that that's not, that's not true. And I think from a branding position, right, people know IronLite and they know what we stand for, what we're about, because we have been so committed to that. And we're in an industry that's highly networked, a lot of word of mouth, right? All of our businesses come from referrals. And so I think if we had ever compromised on any of that, that would have negatively affected us, in the long term.
You've been at this for 6 years now with IronLite specifically. what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced along the way
Yeah.
and how you've overcome them? Because there are a lot of other entrepreneurs listening to this who are probably going through similar challenges or something else and need a shot in the arm to figure out how they're going to persevere through it.
Man, so 6 months into starting the company, my little brother passed from a fentanyl overdose. So
Sorry.
we were just getting off the ground, getting everything going, and then that happened, and I almost quit the company. Like I was just, I, my mom's a single mom, and so she was by herself trying to deal with it, and I was just overwhelmed with everything, and so I talked to, Austin, my co-founder, and I was like, man, I don't know if I can like continue on doing this. Like, I'm not in a good headspace. Like, um, so I took some time just to figure out what I wanted to do. And, ultimately came back to him and said, look, if I continue on doing this with IronLite, one of the things I want to do is start a nonprofit that focuses on issues, related to mental health, addiction, um, criminal justice reform and things, things that my brothers struggle with. And Austin was like, if that's what you want to do, like I'm in. And so fast forward to 2020, IronLite had enough profit at that point to make an investment. And that's when we started IronLite Labs. But I would say in terms of challenges, that was a big one. Obviously COVID, you're a 2-year-old company, you're hockey sticking in terms of growth. And, then COVID happens and you're like, and no one knew that we were in uncharted territory. Right. And I have a really young team. They're extremely talented, but inexperienced in terms of running and scaling a company. And so those were really challenging times. It ended up being our best year in terms of growth, because obviously there's a lot of stuff going on at the state level around policy and things like that. So from a business standpoint, it worked out, but those are scary times.
And Jim Collins has a term called return on bad luck, I believe.
Yeah.
So like it's not just good luck that we have to rely on. We have bad luck as well that we have to take advantage of. So how did you do that during such a turbulent time?
I mean, again, being results driven, results oriented. I think people looked at us and, they're like, if we are going to invest, if we are going to bring on an agency partner, IronLite was attractive. The other thing that we leveraged at that point was people were scared to hire, right? So we really presented ourselves as a better solution where for the cost of a senior person, you could just put IronLite on retainer, and instead of having one person, you could have the full suite. You had, design, digital, data, content. You basically had everything in one. And so from a business standpoint, it made more sense for them to go on retainer with us than to, take on the risk of additional overhead during those times. So that was a decision that we made that's paid, pretty great dividends for us. About 90% of our revenue comes from retainer work. So that's given us really, steady, predictable revenue that's allowed us to make, I think, smart staffing decisions, smart decisions around our growth where, most agencies in our space, there's a lot of projects or campaign revenue that's very lumpy. And it's hard to make, business decisions when revenue is coming in like that.
And did you start out thinking you were going to do those campaigns and projects?
No. So I had learned my previous agency had struggled because we had done a lot of large scale campaigns where you'd have to bring on temporary workers. And it was that really high ebb and flow. And so I knew with IronLite, I'd wanted to do the opposite. So we take on longer term contracts, relationships. We now are, big enough, stable enough that we can take on large scale campaigns, but we really avoided that in the early years because we didn't want to stress the team and we wanted to have really predictable revenue.
So that, even thinking about your business model, that sounds really thoughtful and intentional to help you stabilize the company in order to help it grow.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So those were some serious challenges. Let's talk about some of the good things, especially what's coming up. What's next for IronLite that you're most excited about?
Oh man. So over the past year and a half, we've invested a lot of money very heavily in our data operation. Foundational to our approach and what makes us a little different is we use this neuroscience-based approach to content and storytelling called SCARF. It was developed by a guy by the name of David Rock, and it stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness. And so all of our content strategy, everything passes through that lens. So that was foundational. Then the second thing was this research that was done by Damon Santola at the University of Pennsylvania about the tipping point for social change and how social change comes about, how ideas spread. And he wrote a book called How Behavior Spreads, and he identified that there's a 25% tipping point where if you can get a defined universe to adopt a social norm, it can become the social norm for the rest of the universe. So when we're developing our messaging strategies, when we're creating audience segments, that's always in the back of our mind. And so we knew eventually like we needed a team internally that not only understood that component of our business, but then we could also do original research on our own. So last year, we recruited a full team to build out our operations. So we have 2 data scientists internally, and then we actually got one of Damon Santola's lab mates as our behavioral scientist.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that was one of the coolest hires I've made at IronLite, and it's paid, huge dividends for us. So now we're doing these really robust national models that we're applying and leveraging for our clients around the issue sets that we're working on, and then also understanding the behavioral aspect of it, and then measuring, are we being effective, right? So like not just looking at the outcomes, but then really picking it apart from a data and behavioral science standpoint to really understand what worked, what didn't work, so we can scale obviously our best practices and kill the things that were ineffective.
Those are some exciting developments for IronLite. And I just listening to you talk about this, I'm thinking to myself, you could have started this as a nonprofit. You're talking about changing laws, you're talking about room constraints for people. It's a natural thing to do. But why did you decide this should be a business and you should leverage the power of capitalism in order to bring about these changes in the world and do everything that you're talking about in such rigor in building out your team and accomplishing these goals?
I think losing the profit motives, I think there's some challenges with that, right? I know some really effective nonprofits. I mean, a lot of our clients are nonprofits. But I think for us, at the end of the day, if we're not looking at our bottom line and seeing that we're making money, growing and things like that, you can kind of mask those things with fundraising because you could have someone that just really believes in what you're doing, but the outcomes aren't really there. And I think for us, we're so focused on outcomes that it made sense to start as a for-profit agency.
I think that's absolutely right. That you're focused on outcomes and that the profit motive gives you motivation really to keep driving that success forward. And but I really should have start out by asking, okay, so you're a capitalist, you're running this incredible business. What does capitalism mean to you and why is capitalism such a force for good?
Oh man, capitalism is the greatest force for good that was ever created. And I grew up, in a low income area, not a great area. Again, single mom. And I'll never forget, my mom's a hairstylist, and I'll never forget when I was in junior high, she made the decision to leave the salon she was working at and start her own business. And I was terrified. I was like, Mom, like, what are you doing? Like, this is risky. It's just you. And then, I got to see her like go through that whole entrepreneurial journey, start her own company, and really take control of her life and her finances. She didn't get rich off of it, right? But she was able to earn a decent living. And so I think seeing her go through that, really was an inspiration to me. I was always sort of entrepreneurial, growing up, would go around and cut lawns and do stuff like that. So I think it was just in my DNA naturally, but, the upward mobility that is created with capitalism and, the era that we're in now, anyone can start a business to scale a business, right? Like it's not, there's
100%.
not constraints that there used to be with access to, like you know, also own a custom sneaker and apparel company, right? And, I have a factory, I have factories in China that make stuff for like, it's amazing what you have access to now, and just people being able to lift themselves out of poverty and not being reliant on someone else. I think it's just special. Like there's nothing else like it in the world. So
I couldn't agree more that capitalism creates the opportunity for people to not only lift themselves up, but lift other people up as well by driving innovation, creating value for one another, which is the whole premise of the capitalist system.
Yeah.
And I love that you've got a side company. It's for sneakers and apparel. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
How'd you get into that?
Oh man, I got into that because the co-owner there is this guy Tom Bullman. He's just amazing. So Tom was on several seasons of Ink Master, was a tattoo artist. And then his tattoo shop got shut down during COVID. And so he was trying to figure out what to do. Got connected with this guy named the shoe surgeon, who's like the premier sneaker customizer. Like he's designed several cleats and shoes and stuff for people in the Super Bowl, and celebrities wear stuff. So Tom got linked up with him, learned how to customize shoes. And Tom was really known in the tattoo world for all of these like geek culture tattoos, so like Ninja Turtles and things like that. And so he applied that to his sneakers. And I had followed him from the show, and then when I saw he was making sneakers, I reached out and bought a bunch, and then ended up being his biggest customer. So he saw when I made Ink 5000, he reached out to me. He was like, man, he's like, you seem to know what you're doing. And he was like, I love what I'm doing, but I don't really understand how to scale and grow a business. Like, would you be interested in coming in with me? And so we ended up actually meeting here in Vegas for a licensing expo last year, and then put a deal together. And I've been the one, I renegotiated all of our factory deals, changed all of our pricing. I'm the one that's handling all of our licensing and contracting deals and all of that stuff. And we've tripled the revenue. So last year he did about $500,000 in revenue. We've already done about 1.5 this year so far. So it's just been it's been a fun side hustle. I'm into geek culture stuff and sneakers, so it was a good fit.
And what another great example of capitalism in action,
Oh,
where you
man,
take
yeah.
such a niche topic like
Tell me about
geek
it.
apparel that you turned into a business over $1 million. And like, that's just phenomenal.
Yeah. And it's hilarious. Like our all of our marketing is driven mostly through Meta. So Tom had grown like a really big following from Ink Master on Instagram and Facebook. And it's been a lot of fun. So
That's awesome. Ryan, I really appreciate you joining the podcast today. I really appreciate all the incredible work that you're doing, not only with IronLite, but with your other business and just being such a great example of capitalism in action.
cool.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man.